Konnichiwa minasan, Nihongo no gakusei desu. In this lesson, we will learn the expression "たらどう desu ka?" Why don't you? In English. "たらどう desu ka?" After a verb conveys advice or recommendation. The initial "ta" in "taradou desu ka?" stands for the same ending as in the past tense short form of a verb in the affirmative form. In casual speech, "tara do desu ka?" may be shortened to "tara do" or "tara." In this example, "kusuri o nonda ra do desu ka?" So here, the pronunciation is nondara. So "kusuri o nondara do desu ka?" Okay? "Kusuri o nondara do desu ka?" How about taking some medicine? Again, we review the conjugations for the verbs. Here we have nomu, to drink. So nomu is conjugated as nomu, nomimasu. Nonda, nomimashita. Nomanai, nomimasen. Nomanakatta, nomimasen deshita. Okay? Another example. Motto benkyou shitara dou? Motto benkyou shitara dou? Why don't you study harder? So here we have the conjugation of suru. Shita comes from suru, and suru is an irregular verb attached to many nouns to change those nouns into verbs. So here we have benkyou suru means to study. So benkyou suru is conjugated as suru, benkyou suru, benkyou shimasu, benkyou shita, benkyou shimashita, etc. So here we use benkyou shita. Motto benkyou shitara dou? Motto benkyou shitara dou? Right? So here, the pattern should not be used for extending invitations. Okay? This is not an invitation to study harder. Instead, when we want to use invitation, we use the expression masen ka? Masen ka? Benkyou shimasen ka? Why don't we study, right? Now, when we want to convey advice or recommendation, we do not use taradou desu ka? Okay? Taradou desu ka may sometimes have a disapproving tone, expressing criticism of the person for not having performed the action that should have already been performed. It is therefore safer to avoid using it unless you were asked for advice. Instead, we can use the expression "hoga ii desu." It is better for you to, it is better if, you should, etc. So this expression means pieces of advice that you should do this, you should not do this. It is better for you to do this, it is better for you not to do this. So, "hoga ii desu." Okay? Remember this expression. Renshu shimashou. Let's practice. So here we're going to use the expression "taradou desu ka?" Why don't you check the newspaper? Here we have "shinbun no mita." So mita means to see. Since this is not a literal translation, this is acceptable. So "shinbun no mitara dou desu ka?" Why don't you check the newspaper? Okay. And for the next 8 examples, we're going to formulate sentences like this. Next to, why don't you consult with your teacher, or why don't you send resume to companies? Right? For the first one, "sensei ni sodan shitara dou desu ka?" So sodan shita comes from sodan suru, to consult. Sensei ni sodan shitara dou desu ka? Next, kaisha ni rirekishou o okutta ra dou desu ka? Kaisha ni rirekishou o okutta ra dou desu ka? Why don't you send resume to companies? Okay, so here okutta comes from okuru. Okuru means to send. 会社に履歴書を送ったらどうですか? Why don't you go to the party? パーティーに行ったらどうですか? パーティーに行ったらどうですか? Okay? Why don't you join a club? So, サークルに So, サークル is circle. サークルに入ったらどうですか? サークルに入ったらどうですか? Why don't you join a club? サークルに入ったらどうですか? Why don't you give up? 諦めたらどうですか? So, 諦める means to give up. 諦めたらどうですか? Why don't you give up? プロポーズしたらどうですか? Why don't you propose marriage? So here, プロポーズ comes from propose in English. So, we add した。プロポーズしたらどうですか? And last two examples, we have, why don't you give her a ring? Or, why don't you meet her parents? 彼女に So, 彼女 means she. And then, if we add the particle ni, it becomes her. So, 彼女に指輪を means ring. 指輪をあげたらどうですか? So, あげた comes from あげる to give. Okay? We have learned the word to give in the last video. 彼女に指輪をあげたらどうですか? Why don't you give her a ring? Last we have 彼女の両親に So her parents 彼女の両親に会ったらどうですか? Here we have 会った means meet, but its dictionary form is 会う会ったらどうですか? Why don't you meet her parents? Okay? Alright, I want to thank you for watching and listening, and I hope you have learned something.